Welcome everyone to this week's edition of Level Up with Laiken. If you are looking for tangible strategies to level up your practice and the mindset you're going to need to do it, please hit subscribe. I interview a new lawyer each week who talks about the strategies that they use to successfully scale up their practice. And this week, not as if this woman needs any introduction, we have Alexis Gamliel of Gamliel Law. And Alexis specializes in personal injury and discrimination cases. And Alexis, maybe you could tell everyone where they can find you if they want to contact you after today's episode.
Hello, everyone. And first and foremost, thank you so much, Ashley, for having me. I watch this program regularly and I love it and it inspires me in the middle of a Tuesday. I think it's a great boost. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So everybody can find me on social media, via email, by phone. My work phone is 310-256-3916. My email is alexis@gamliel.law.com. And my website is gamliel.law.com. My social media is @Gamliel Law. I am everywhere. However you want to find me is good with me. I love connecting with people. And as Ashley said, I practice personal injury. I also practice employment law, including discrimination and other types of employment claims.
Fantastic. And I am Ashley Laiken. You obviously know where to find me on YouTube, on social media. My Instagram is Laiken_law_group. I told you I'm having one of those mornings. And I just wanted to start today's episode with the fact that it is spring. It is my favorite season of the year. I'm pretty sure all of my neighbors think I have some sort of weird disorder because I was literally spotted like smelling everyone's flowers yesterday, like on a walk. So it is a beautiful spring day. Do you like spring, Alexis?
I love spring. My birthday's in spring. My daughter's birthday's in spring. It's a period of renewal. Everything is good in spring.
I love spring. The weather's warm. I've got my spring attire on. We are good to go. And Alexis, you mark the end of a Level Up with Laiken for the Women's History Month. I had all-female guests this month, so congratulations on bringing it to a successful close. And, you know, yesterday we had a very interesting conversation about your foray into personal injury. So I was hoping you could share that story because I think it definitely says something about what we as personal injury attorneys have to contribute to the world. And I thought your story was very compelling and I enjoyed it so much. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that story with everybody.
Of course. So when I was in undergrad, actually, so I went to UCLA, and at that time I thought that I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, period, paragraph. And there's not really a particular moment where I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. But as far as becoming a plaintiff side lawyer and a litigator, that all changed for me and really ignited a flame in me when I was at Loyola Law School and I saw Amy Solomon give a talk my very first week. It was in Robinson Courtroom at Loyola Law School, and my professor in torts, Professor Knockleby, encouraged me to go to this talk that was put on by, I believe, the Consumer Law Society. And when I walked into the courtroom, at that moment, I didn't know that I wanted to be a plaintiff side attorney. I didn't know that I wanted to be a litigator. And I walked out a very different person. What I saw with Amy Solomon was that no matter what I do in my life, I want to be able to command the attention of a room in the same way that she did. And she talks a lot about being a dancer and how that has informed her practice and the level of performance that goes into the legal profession, especially as trial lawyers. And she talked about this really moving case called Zucker versus Disney. It was about a young boy who was caught in a clamshell position and paralyzed on the Roger Rabbit ride at Disneyland. She told me a couple of things, and she told the room a couple of things that really have stuck with me over the years. First, that as part of the settlement, she negotiated with Disney. Emergency medical care stations were set up throughout the park. So now when you go to Disneyland, you literally see Amy Solomon's work. And I thought that was fabulous. I thought that was a really meaningful way to contribute to the world. And these are ways that we can make practical changes in our society for the better. The second thing was that in the discovery process, she uncovered documents by just not stopping and pushing until she got what she wanted, which was a blueprint for the ride that had an additional safety feature that likely would have prevented the incident that happened. But that it was later decided that safety measure was not going to be implemented because it added something like an additional 2 seconds to the line, which was not a good look for Disney. So things like that that she said have always stuck with me. But I think more importantly was just the way that she carried herself, like such a force, and so classy and so inspiring, and I'll never forget that moment. And I approached her after the talk, and I gave her my business card, like the nerdy little law student that I was. And
The fact that you even had business cards in law school.
I sought out the graphics department at Loyola, and I was like, "Hey, listen, do you guys make business cards? I'd like to get one." And so I got a whole stack of them, and I started handing them out left and right, and started making a name for myself while I was in law school. And so anyway, I gave her my card at the end of the talk, and I said, "This is my first exposure to plaintiff side litigation. And wow, what an eye-opening experience this is to hear from you, and such a powerful force in our community." And I'm very, very grateful that we've stayed in touch over the years. I kept in touch with her all throughout law school. We had a coffee date very soon after that initial talk, and ever since then we've been in touch. And I'm really grateful for her mentorship over the years. I've pretty much done every single thing that she's recommended that I do, because I will follow her advice pretty much blindly. I think, of course, with staying true to myself, but she told me, take every class in law school that gets you up on your feet and talking. So I did that. I took evidence for trial lawyers. I took advanced trial advocacy. She said, try out for the Byrne trial team, which is Loyola's national award-winning trial team. And I did that. I tried out for the team. I made the team. I competed and won first place in regionals for the AAJ competition. Then I moved on, and my team of 4 won 5th place in the nation in law school. And I remember during one of the final rounds, like I heard her voice in my head, and just I was trying to channel this dancer mentality, because I also have a background in dance, and how when you really enter that state of flow is where the magic happens. I think you really prepare your case, and then you're just in the zone, and the rest happens. But the preparation with the performance, I think, is where it really comes together. And that to me, I attribute to really great advice from Amy.
Okay. Do you still keep in touch with Amy today?
And I actually, so the very first CALA event I ever went to was a women's roundtable put on by Amy Solomon and Ibiari Sek. They were moderating it. And I keep in touch with both of them. And when I was starting the women's roundtables with Justice HQ, I talked to Amy Solomon about what she felt helped make that program successful, the CALA women's roundtables. And, I think it's all about utilizing all of your connections, keeping in touch so it's meaningful, and carrying those relationships throughout your practice and your personal life too. I enjoy it. I actually really enjoy keeping in touch with people. It's something I really pride myself on. Like I'm sure we'll get into this later on, but I lived in a foreign country pretty much all by myself. I arrived without really knowing anyone. I lived in Israel, and that was between undergrad at UCLA and law school at Loyola. And I mean, there were people that I met in Israel who came to my wedding in 2018 that I still keep in touch with all the time. And a lot of my new case referrals and And business referrals now come from my connections from all different chapters of my life. So I keep in touch with, just as much as I keep in touch with the Titans, I keep in touch with all of my peers and people who have helped me and made my life richer along the way.
Let me ask you, because you're obviously a natural extrovert. And I have been told by other extroverts that they do get a lot of business from the connections they keep. So, just as a personal question, how do you have the time and energy for it? Like, I don't do that, but I'll tell you what, my twin sister is like amazing at reaching out to all of our family members, even our extended family members. And I'm like, how do you manage to run a firm, have a newborn, be a wife, be a lawyer, and maintain all of those social connections? How do you do it?
I think they're mutually beneficial. So I don't think that I could have a successful new practice without having had that history and continued effort at keeping my relationship strong. The way I make time for it is it's in my soul. I don't really know.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
how to explain it. It's part of who I am, what I do when I wake up in the morning. If I see like an article that I think a friend would like, I send it to them. And that's like one way I keep in touch. Or just a phone call to catch up with a law school friend, dinners here and there. But it really takes, I think, just that inner flame that you want to connect with people. I don't think it can be fabricated. Those people where it's not really natural to reach out and stay connected and maybe they view it as a chore, I would say the more that you do it, the more you want to do it. Because sometimes when I'm overwhelmed with the practice or the business or all different things and I'm feeling like there's just a lot going on, I reach back to my network and to my friends who make me feel good, who remind me of who I am, and that keeps me going. So it helps. So when you realize that the time is well spent, I think for anyone who's watching this who's like, that's just not me, try it and see what it does for you. I think it'll make you a happier person, a more effective lawyer. You'll end up having conversations that give you new ideas and new strategies of things to try with your cases. So I think it's something that requires effort for some, but it's well worth it.
So I would back up that statement because I think throughout the pandemic, I spent so much time alone that the minute I got the opportunity to start going out again, socially distanced, with masks, all of that, I took it. And Saturday night, I went out with Diane Chang and Lourdes de Armas, and Lourdes was laughing because she was like, I think we switched places in the pandemic. She's like, I'm the social butterfly. I'm the one that always wants to go out. And she was like, and then all of a sudden, I stopped wanting to do that. And now you're the one dragging me out because everywhere I go, I have to drag Lourdes along and I make her drag me along. And I have to say that even when it feels overwhelming, like, if I spent the whole day Saturday cleaning or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I gotta shower and get dressed and go, I know that when I come home, I'm going to be re-energized on Sunday. And I found that to be very true.
I think it just lights a fire and it's motivation that you have people who are in your corner. So you want to make them proud. And it's just good vibes, I think. Your dinner on Saturday night. Like I too come off of dinners like I've got some new energy. Like new energy for the week, new energy for my practice, for my cases. And being a well-rounded person, as I think a lot of us agree, is what makes a great lawyer too.
It is, but it's extraordinarily challenging to do that even in these times. And I give you kudos because I think that's so important, especially when you're a new mother. And I wish that I had done more of that when my kids were babies, because I feel like it would have made the whole process more enjoyable and less exhausting. So I think that you probably should be giving talks on work-life balance, because it sounds like you have that somewhat figured out.
I don't think anyone has it 100% figured out. It is something that cannot be, it's not a puzzle that you figure out in one afternoon. It's not even, it's just some days, I'm not going to lie, it feels insurmountable. It feels really difficult to be spread in a million directions. But what gets me through it is, why did I start? Why did I start? Because I am my own person, and I want to dictate what happens in my life and take control over my life. And that's because I'm prioritizing two things: my firm and my family now. And if they don't fall in those two F's, then, then it's not for me. Like, if it's going to compromise one of those two things, then it's not for me. But if it feeds and it helps those two things, then it is for me. And that includes my friends, having moments of quiet time and alone time so I can recharge. You can't run on empty, and you've heard a million times, I'm sure, you can't pour from an empty cup. And sometimes for new mothers or for anyone who's just starting out their practice, there is a lot to do, a lot. And the tasks just never end. But what gets you through is taking moments of pause so that you can come back with renewed energy and just, have that level of, I don't want to call it balance, because I think it's really integration of your personal and your professional life. That's what I think gets me through. And like I said, the moments of alone time are really key for me.
So we do have a lot of JHQ mothers who do have very small children. So maybe you could talk for a minute about how you try. I know I don't want to use the word balance, because I agree with you. Like, I think it's funny when people do say, and I totally just did it, work-life balance. That's not realistic.
Anything against the term. Just, I think it's like, for me, it's like I said, I feel like I view it as more of an integration.
Okay.
But yeah, for the JHQ moms or any new moms out there who are either just practicing law or running their own practice, I think having gratitude first and foremost for having both is the mentality. Like, you talk a lot about mentality, and the mindset that's helpful for leveling up, right? So the way that I try to have to get through, and when I say get through, I don't mean like plow through it. I mean, how do you flourish? How do you bloom in both areas? I think is to have gratitude that you get to have both. So like for me yesterday, for example, I stopped working and I got to witness my daughter's very first steps.
Oh, yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah.
Realizing that if I had, I think it's really important. You've got to do the work. There's just no way around it. You got to do the work. For me, I feel most at peace when it's funny. I told my husband yesterday, I was like, I feel most at peace when I'm fighting in the war, to fight the fight as a lawyer. That's where I feel most calm, because I know I'm doing the work. When you're not doing the work, that's when the stress begins to pile on. But like I said, having those moments of pause to witness moments like first steps are invaluable.
But logistically, how do you do it? I mean, do you have help for childcare? Do you have set hours during your day that you do work and then you stop working and then you focus on your family? Like, logistically, how do you do it?
So here's how it works. As a practical matter, I wake up in the morning, I spend quality time with my daughter and my husband, Amir. First of all, huge shout out to Amir, because he is the best partner I could ever imagine. So incredibly supportive, so motivating, and so inspiring. He's a partner at Perkins Coie, practicing bankruptcy and restructuring, and also does business litigation too. We all spend time together in the morning, and I leave for work, and I come back, and I'm ready to be in mom mode. And I try really hard not to check my emails during that time. And so I spend a couple hours with Ella before she goes to sleep. So I've got the morning time, I've got that early evening time or later evening time before she goes to bed. And having the bookends of the family time, I think, makes the work time go by quickly. And before I know it, I'm ready to spend family time again. And I think just having that, like I said, the bookends are are key for me. That's what keeps me going. I work out of Justice HQ in downtown LA. So I start my day at home, and then I come to Justice HQ in DT, and then I head back home.
Are you like a true solo, meaning you don't have anybody working for you?
Right. That's right.
So logistically, when you're working out at JHQ, do you take advantage of the mail scanning services, or do you scan your own mail? Like, who does all of that?
I have a private mailbox in Brentwood, where I live, and I really actually feel like I'm gonna smile on these times and look back and say, wow, like I walk with my daughter after work, and I take her on a walk. She's my little litigation assistant. And we go and we get the work mail, and then I scan whatever I need to scan at home, and that's how I do it.
Okay, and then you go to JHQ with your laptop and then get all of the email related, or, you know, in terms of like printing and all of that, do you do that at home?
Well, mostly electronic. I print things to the extent that I need to. And sometimes I think it's helpful to have hard copies of documents, especially when you're preparing for depositions and you want to highlight and mark up things and all of that. So I do whatever I need to do, wherever I need to do it in that environment. There's not a hard and fast rule.
Right. Okay. So, and I think that's one of the benefits of COVID for us smaller solo practitioners, because I think I'm hoping that this whole transition to an electronic based practice stays in place. Like electronically serving everything. Like when I get depot notices in the mail, it's like I kind of giggle because I'm like, why did you bother printing the paper? Like, just send it to me electronically, you know? So I think that's fantastic. And I think that that is one benefit of COVID that allows us to work from wherever we need to be working from. Like, you're in downtown LA, my home spot will be JHQ in Torrance. So I'll be transitioning to doing practically the same thing that you're doing. So let me ask you this, like, you know, switching up topics a little bit. I do know about your work history. I know you worked at a major firm. You were exposed to, you know, very highly contested, high value cases in both PI. Did you focus on employment law? I'm not sure if you did or didn't. There.
I did.
Okay. So you were able to get invaluable experience on that end, and then you go start your own firm. So what was going through your head when you decided to take the reins and start your own firm?
So, okay. So when I decided to start my own firm, I was going through a very, very difficult time having this experience of having somebody very, very close to me pass away. My mother-in-law, with whom I was very close, had cancer. She suffered through cancer for 2 years. I think that experience really, really made me realize what life is about in a wicked way. I was forced to realize that tomorrow is not guaranteed. She passed away, and obviously I was devastated. I felt like I had lost a best friend. And I'm in my, and you can tell I'm getting choked up. It's really hard for me to talk about. But I think that one of the things that made that experience meaningful as it relates to my practice is that it gave me this sense of maturity and understanding. When clients tell me that they're going through tragedy, I can feel it because I'm familiar with it. And although it's, every case is different, every client is unique, I know what suffering feels like, and so I take that with me to my practice. In terms of founding my practice and deciding that I wanted to open my own law firm, I think that having that experience combined with having, giving birth to my daughter, gave me this sense of what is life really about? It's a loss of a life, it's the birth of new life. And it made me realize, like I said, what is life about? It's about the people in it, and love, and you have to nurture your life like a loving relationship. And um, so that was a lot of the inspiration for my firm. I know my mother-in-law, whose name is also Ella. We named our daughter after Ella as well. Smiling down and really, really proud. She always loved hearing the war stories about my practice, and I know she would be so happy to learn that I founded Gamliel Law, which was her last name too.
Okay. Now, and I'm sorry to hear about her passing, but I am happy to see what you took from that experience, because I think that's valuable. That's a lot for you to have done.
And it really helps me relate to people, I think, better, because if you asked, and I've known you for many years, Ashley. You knew me before that, all of that. And I think I've gained a sense of healthy skepticism about the world. Maybe I was a little bit too smiley and bubbly and thought everything was happy and positive all the time, and it's not. And I think a lot of people want to have a lawyer on their side who's been through some stuff because they know what hardship is.
Agreed. I agree with you. Because I feel like our jobs I'm never just a lawyer, right? Especially for the clients that need a little extra, right? Like the clients who've been legitimately injured and they're like, Ash, I'm so tired of this. I'm tired of being in pain. I'm tired, and it's like, then you got to be a friend, a counselor in all aspects of the world, and they want to feel like you understand them on an empathetic level. Mm-hmm. And I get a lot of clients who are like, I'm so happy to have you because I can lend them that. Because I've actually had a lawyer myself who was very unsympathetic and unempathetic, and I didn't feel connected, and it affected my trust. So I think that's really important when your client needs to trust you, is that you truly understand on some personal level what they're going through, and you're able to communicate to them that you do understand. Yeah. Like, I think that goes a million miles in terms of representation and your ability to fight for them, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's just that tangible sense of motivation when you see yourself in your client. And also just like, these deep relationships with your client. And I think, by the way, we were talking about COVID and how it's enhanced the practice, and things that we hope will stay. Well, a lot of my clients, because I started my practice in the pandemic, I vetted my potential cases on Zoom. I have periodic meetings with my clients on Zoom, and I think I see them face to face even more often than before the pandemic. And when I say face to face, I'm referring to on Zoom. And there's a certain level of connection that can happen when you're speaking face to face that maybe a phone call doesn't do. So that, I think, is one of the silver linings. And thanks to you and this program, like one of the first programs that I tuned into that was in this new format that's more interview style was Pratik Shah's interview. And I just loved it. Like, I felt like I knew him afterwards, and he gave his number out, or we could text him. And I felt like I had a question that maybe was a good idea to direct to him a few weeks ago, and he responded. And I think this kind of stuff really brings us closer, both with our clients and with fellow attorneys. So
I'm really happy to hear that. I'm glad and I highly recommend his product. Esquire Tech is fantastic. I use it religiously. So, but that's interesting, Alexis, because you started a practice in the middle of a pandemic.
Shortly having a baby, and I was just like, am I insane? Yes, I think I'm a little bit insane. But Deborah Chang, I heard her say I can't remember which speaking engagement it was, relatively recently on a webinar. She said something like, if you want something done, ask a busy woman. And I think that's really telling. And so I try to do as much as I can with any given day, because like I said, a big foundation of my practice is that tomorrow is not guaranteed. So we have to go hard today on whatever it is that we want, whether that's a case result, whether that's having a strong law firm straight from the outset. And I tried to build that. And I'm building my empire. I don't know what that's going to look like 5-10 years from now. But I know that today it's as strong as I want it to be, and it's continuing to grow.
Okay. So I want to unpack what you just said a little bit, because there's a couple things in there I like.
Okay.
Now, when you mention going hard, I agree with you. And Lourdes and I speak TikTok, meaning we literally every day send TikToks to each other. Like, we don't even have to talk. We just send TikToks. And some of the ones that she sends that I love are Mel Robbins. And I've read her book. I love her. I agree with her statement wholeheartedly that if you want something, no one is coming to save you. You have to force yourself to do the things you don't want to do. And I remember my dad told me when I was little that the definition of success is doing what you don't want to do on a daily basis, right? And I do believe there's an element of truth to that. That also became very problematic for me when I started my firm. And the reason is because I didn't know where to stop. And I run into burnout. Some people don't. Like one of my brothers, like this guy he'll get so laser focused on a project, he'll work 20 hours a day, sleep 3, and then go back to work for another 20 hours like that. And I had to let go of the notion that was what I had to be. And so what I do now in order to maintain stamina, I hit burnouts. And when I feel that burnout coming, if there's no massive pressing deadline, I stop. And it's typically, like I'm a single mom, and it's typically like the morning that my kids get picked up on a Monday morning. Sometimes for half a day, I gotta just stop and recharge. And then I'll hit it again that afternoon, or sometimes even the next morning. I learned recently when I went away on a girls' trip to Sedona, that was exactly what I needed for that moment to be able to recharge my battery. So I want to emphasize that it's really important, especially for people who are brand new to starting their own practice, because it is extraordinarily overwhelming, or those who are thinking about it, to be really, really kind to yourself in terms of this idea of how hard you have to work. And I'll tell you who hits it on the head on social media, and I love it, is Tally. Tally Goody hits it on the head in terms of taking care of yourself. You were right. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And I had to learn the hard way trying to, because I thought you cannot be successful unless you find a way to plow through burnout. Wrong. That's a hamster wheel. So I think that is very, very good. And the other thing you mentioned was building an empire. Because when I had Arish Hamanpour on, he said in order to be successful, and if anybody knows how to build a successful firm, it's that dude, right? You got to get real specific about what your dream is. Like, I know what my ideal law firm in 5 to 10 years looks like. I know exactly what I want to be doing. I know exactly what my strengths are. I know exactly what my weaknesses are, and I know what's going to bring me professional joy and success in the future. You starting a firm in the middle of a pandemic when a lot of people were suffering, like what, I know you mentioned a little bit about what your mindset was. You said that, you heard from Debbie Chang, you gotta go after what you want, and you gotta get through it. But were you afraid? Like, was it support from your family and friends that gave you the motivation you need? What was it?
So obviously a combination of factors go into a big decision like this. And practically speaking, I think my education and my training and my experience really gave me the tools to be able to do it. But I think one of the things that I often go back to is this notion that we all need to build our brand before we need it. And that comes from being just a good person in the community. And like we were talking about at the beginning of this, building relationships and keeping them and nurturing them. But the support that I receive from my family and friends was overwhelming. As soon as I announced this potential plan that I was thinking about, I was overwhelmed with how supportive people were. And that carried through to the moment I made my announcement publicly that I was opening my own practice. People have been referring me cases left and right, and I don't think that's because I just happened to open a new firm. It's because the firm had my name on it, and it has my name, and people know who I am because starting from a very young age and from throughout all the different chapters of my life, I've stayed in touch with people. And people know me, they know my work product, they know that I take a great deposition, they know that I have a lot of experience, that I have trial experience, they know what I'm about and my core values, which is just being a good person and being trustworthy. And so I'm extremely grateful that my practice is succeeding from the outset, and I don't take it for granted because I know it's because of all the work I put in over many, many years. The support was key because it helped me recognize what I have been about for a long time, and that I'm exactly the type of person that would excel in doing this. So when I was sort of deciding what was the next move I was going to make with my career, shortly after I had my daughter, I think one of the conversations that I had with someone that I met a long time ago, who's in the legal community, she said, I was thinking, and my husband and I were talking, and we were like, what would be a great fit for Alexis? Like, where do we see her? And like, is there a way that we see this all playing out? And she said something that sticks with me, and I hear it in my head often. She said, Alexis doesn't need to work for somebody. She is somebody. And hearing that, I mean, it hit my heart. Like I was so flattered, and it made me confident and step into my power that I am my own brand, and I got this. I can do it.
Okay. Now, that's interesting because you just reminded me of something. I remember having a long conversation with you on the phone when you were thinking about it. You were in your transition period, and you were thinking about it, and that makes me want to emphasize what you've kind of been saying all along, which is utilize your resources. Yeah. Talk to people you've built relationships with, especially those who have already done it. And I think that's key. The other thing is you were talking about building your brand and the fact that you were fortunate enough because you have shown integrity over the years, because you have shown work ethic over the years, that when you started your own firm, people were referring you cases left and right. Is that how you were able to start and build a client base from the outset?
Yes, I think it is a pure product of many years of hard work and working at relationships. 100%.
Okay. And for those who are still working at firms and considering starting their own practice, would you recommend, what would you say to those people? Like, what would be your number one recommendation?
I would be honest and say that it is not for everybody. It is really, really hard, and you need to feel supported. You need to feel confident in yourself and your skills. It's not just about relationships. You need to have the skills to back up what happens when those relationships send you cases. And so you've got to work on both consistently over a long period of time, day in and day out. And then I think it's all about the fire. Once you have the skills and the relationships, then you got to have that fire that says, I'm my own person, I can do this, and I'm going to build my own law firm, no matter how much work it takes.
Now, I do want to transition a little bit because you are very active in terms of female empowerment. You lead the women's group. The women's group had been started, at JHQ before you joined, and then you joined and you literally took it up and breathed life into it. And I understand that you are active in terms of women's groups for other organizations. What's the reason behind that? Like, what's your motivation? Do you have a personal story that is tied to this? What's going on there?
I haven't thought specifically like why women's groups. I think so in my practice, gender discrimination is a huge part of that. So I've always been about women's rights, and pregnancy discrimination is one of my core focus areas in my practice of employment law.
Do you see a lot of that?
I do. I see a lot of it, and especially now, so I have a number of pregnancy discrimination cases right now. And what I'm seeing in my practice is that employers have used COVID as a license to do whatever they want, whether it's lawful or not. I've got a client right now who worked for a company up in Northern California, and she was pregnant. And I think the same exact afternoon that she informed her supervisor that she was pregnant, she got a performance improvement plan. That is not a coincidence, okay? I see this time and time again in my practice, and it disgusts me, and I'm out for blood in those kinds of cases because I take it personally when I see an employer discriminating against a woman because of her gender or because she is having a child. So on all of my cases, I'm passionate, especially on those kinds of cases. So as far as the women's group, those are my people. There's no other way to put it. I don't know. I enjoy it. They're my people. I like it. I want to bring women together. That's it.
Okay. Now, I was having this conversation with a couple of girlfriends yesterday, and I was saying that I don't know if it's societal, personal experience, I don't know what it was, but I always had this idea in my head of women, like, most of my core friends have always been guys, not women. And I think I had it in my head that women were, overly competitive, gossipy, petty, until JHQ. And it totally changed my way of thinking. And I was telling, a couple of friends the other day that it was surprising. It was a surprising revelation to me that some of the most sympathetic, empathetic people and supportive people in my life have turned out to be women, because we can connect on things. Like, I always seem to think that my problems are unique to me, and it turns out if I actually tell a group of people what I'm going through, it's never unique to me. So
it's a huge moment of exhale when you realize you have these common experiences and somebody has dealt with it or is dealing with it before. Like we were talking about, how is a practical matter, do you do both, have your own law firm and have a child? And having these conversations, it's like, okay, that woman is doing it, she's doing great, like I can do this. And the more we see that, I think the better, and the more strength it gives us in our day-to-day.
100%. I feel like I get something from other groups of women I can't get from the community as a whole, right? Like, when I'm feeling a little stressed or a little overwhelmed and I need to talk to somebody, I'm going straight for another mama, because I know she's gonna get it, right? And that sets me back on track, back onto my purpose, and able to keep pushing forward. Because being a mom, I'm not a wife. That's an extra added element of your life that I'm not familiar with. But being a mom, being a lawyer, being a business owner, it's a lot. And you're right, it's not for everyone. But it is doable, and I don't think it's doable without, and one of my 2021 goals was to create a female tribe, because I really feel like it's not doable unless you have that really strong support group. And I never realized, and I want every woman out there to know, that there are like-minded women who are there, ready, willing, and able to have an equivalent relationship with you where you guys can push each other forward. And there is value in that you cannot find anywhere else. It has gotten me through some of my darkest moments in the pandemic, I will tell you. But I think you are an expert at that, that is one of the benefits I have gained from the women's group that you lead, is to know that there are so many other female, either they're power trial attorneys or they're power trial attorneys who run their own businesses, they're moms, they're wives, they're involved in the community like you. Whatever it is that you are passionate about and whatever it is that means something to you, there is another woman whose purpose in life is the same as yours, and you guys can help each other get through it. So thank you for your work in the women's front, because I have personally gained a lot of value from it. And I'm happy to see that you were the one to pick that up and do it, because you are so happy and because you do have such a great attitude.
It's just as much, a labor of love as it is to, pick up the phone and call a close girlfriend. And why not share that experience with the community? And we've invited the men to join our women's roundtable.
And they have. They have.
Yes, it's a women's group, but it's really for everybody. And I'm so happy to hear that you found it helpful and useful. And I enjoy it. And I'm really glad that you and others do too. A shout out to Brett Sachs and Benji and the guys of Sachs Law for joining on our women's groups. John Roach has also joined us, Jimmy Cabral.